Follow the round table. These are your most important 5 characters, especially everyone but Morgause. In your book, it talks about Mordred being the nephew of Arthur, but there are some versions, and they're probably more fitting versions of the story, that actually suggest that Morgause, who is actually half-sister to Arthur, once came to Camelot, seduced Arthur, and slept with Arthur. Arthur not knowing that this was his half-sister. Being an incestuous act, out of this comes a knight that would eventually be seen as an evil knight, the antagonist of this part of the story, Sir Mordred. Of course, Arthur is also married to Guinevere, and the other portion that brings down, beyond the birth of Mordred, the other thing that brings down the round table is, of course, what you have over there on the right. Guinevere and Lancelot are having an affair. There are 2 sort of pull tabs that I've got here, and you can either write this in your own words, or you can just wait for the video, or you can not write it at all. It's up to you. But after the quest for the Holy Grail, everything goes back to normal, but Lancelot actually thinks he's going to change. But once he gets back, once he sees Guinevere, once Guinevere wants to keep the affair going, Lancelot apparently is too weak of a person spiritually to say no. So they begin their affair anew. And their affair is probably the worst kept secret in all of Camelot, because the only person that seems to not know that Lancelot and Guinevere are having this affair is Arthur. Everyone else, it seems like, knows, including our bad guy Mordred. Despite the fact that the Round Table is supposed to destroy any type of hierarchy, that it's supposed to make things better, Mordred does sense that other people are considered better than him, and it's certainly true that Gawain, Lancelot, knights like those are considered higher-ranking knights. Certainly when Galahad was there for a short time, everyone was really impressed with him. Percival is one of the other high-ranking knights. Of course, he's also gone now, too. Mordred's jealous of these other knights, specifically Lancelot, who's, of course, the top knight, the first knight. So ultimately, he sets a trap, and they catch Guinevere and Lancelot in the act. Arthur is enraged by this, so he sends knights after them. They catch Lancelot and Guinevere in Guinevere's bedchamber during the affair. And Lancelot, because he is the greatest knight, is able to fight his way out. He grabs a sword, seemingly with no armor on, as far as I remember in the story. He basically fights his way through any other knights that are there, and he does escape. And then, of course, Guinevere is left behind. He can't save her as well. Now, with this, as I have down here at the bottom, when confronted, he fights his way out, but then Guinevere's left behind, and here's the setup that we have now. That Guinevere will be burned at the stake. Lancelot flees, and he goes to France, where he has his own castle, because he's still a high-ranking nobleman, so they all have their own castles. Even though Lancelot spends most of his time at Camelot, he's got a large amount of land and his own subjects in France. He's not a king, but he's probably the equivalent of like a duke or an earl or a count or something like that. A high-ranking official. Gaheris and Gareth are the ones appointed as guards, because as we have down here, Gawain thinks this is all too base, too bad for Camelot to be doing, that Camelot should not execute its own queen no matter what happened. That this is beneath the dignity of Camelot. So he refuses to be part of it. But Gaheris and Gareth are the ones that are appointed as guards, while Lancelot isn't willing to let the woman that he loves be executed. So when he finds out about the execution, he comes back and he rushes into Camelot, and he goes into battle. And he kills Gareth. And he kills Gaheris. They are Gawain's brothers. Gawain and Lancelot actually are very close friends. But it's hard to keep friendship going when the person you consider a close friend just killed your 2 brothers. Lancelot does get Guinevere out. So Guinevere is now safe. Lancelot goes back to France. They don't go together to France. And now we've got the big note slide. So again, this is why the video is very important. And Guinevere and Lancelot part ways. Arthur and Gawain decide they're going to go after Lancelot. So they take a huge army of knights, huge army of their men, and they cross over to France, and they go and they lay siege to Lancelot's castle. So they've got all these troops surrounding it. As they surround it, Sir Mordred is left in charge back at Camelot. He ends up taking over back home. Meanwhile, at the battlefront, Lancelot, for the longest time, he stays inside his castle because he does not want to come out. He still considers Arthur a good man. Even though he knows Arthur wants him dead, he kind of understands, considering he was sleeping with Arthur's wife, he understands the hatred there, and he still thinks of Arthur and Gawain as friends. He doesn't want to go out there and face them. What are the options? He gets killed, or he kills one of the two people he considers his two closest friends? There's no win-win. That's a lose-lose situation there. No matter what happens, this is bad for Lancelot. So he stays inside his castle and just kind of deals with the siege for the longest time. Eventually, he's forced to go out and he fights Gawain, and he kills Gawain. So Arthur's army is weakened even more. He's now lost his top two knights because Lancelot is, of course, on the other side, and Gawain is now dead. He's also lost Gareth, Gaheris, Percival, Galahad. The Round Table's losing people quickly at this point. Well, he finds out that Mordred is taken over, so he decides to turn around and go back to Camelot and save his kingdom. He realizes that while what Lancelot did is wrong, that his vengeful attempt to take out Lancelot wasn't really benefiting anyone. So he turns his army around and he leaves Lancelot alone and he goes back. We get to the bottom here. Arthur's warned in a dream to make temporary peace with Mordred and to call on Lancelot, who will loyally bring his armies to fight with Arthur, allowing Arthur to win. This is what he finds out in a dream. So he decides to take that advice. Arthur's forces cross the channel. Instead of doing battle, they basically decide to have peace talks. The two come together, but both sides, both Mordred's side and Arthur's side, they're fearful of treachery from the other side, that the peace agreement is some type of trap to try to kill the other. So the armies are both basically told that if someone pulls a sword, if someone looks like they're going to attack, rush into battle. Because we're not going to let King Arthur or King Mordred, for the other side, be executed through treachery. Two sides come together. Peace talks actually go incredibly well. But as they're talking, one of the knights gets bit on the heel by a snake that just happens to be going by sort of in the reeds that they're talking in. When he gets bit, if you had a sword and you got bit by a snake, he does what anyone would do. He pulls a sword and attacks the snake. But the armies see someone pull a sword, and they all rush into battle. Tomorrow we'll pick up there, because tomorrow we will get into the passing of Arthur, which is our final story of this unit. We'll get into the last notes for this as well, so that's where we'll be tomorrow.